Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Best Books Ever. I'm Tyler, and today we are starting a new series. We're starting Cirque du Freak by Darren Shan. Today we're doing Book 1, A Living Nightmare. The entire thing, front to back. And we're going to talk about it. So, this is a series. It's a new series. So I'm going to say, this is a series that I've obviously read before, like the majority of books that we've covered on here. I remember really, really enjoying it when I was younger. Very good series. I remember there being a lot of things about this series that I haven't experienced in other books before. And so I just thought that was really fun. It was definitely like around the time when I read this, I was reading a lot. And this was definitely one of the ones that stuck out a lot to me. So, very excited to go through this. I will say this first book, for anyone reading this for the first time, this series, and this book, I guess, too, if you feel like this book is a little slow, like a little bit slow, it does feel like this book is a lot of almost like prologue to their journey. I think that's the one good thing about, you kind of look at this series and you say, oh, gosh, there's like 12 books. That's a lot of books. Well, these books aren't too long. We went through this one, and I think, I don't know if it slightly differs between like digital and paperback, but digitally, I think this book was like 178 pages or something, which is nothing. Nothing at all. And that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much what the other books are too. So if this felt like prologue, we do get through this pretty quickly. And next book, clearly by the ending of this book, we see next book is when we're going to finally start the vampire adventures, whatever those may be. So yeah, a few things to talk about today. Not too much. Like I said, this book's not very long, and also this, not too much of consequence really happens. A lot of setup. So I guess we'll just start with what this book is, right? It ends off with Steve declaring that he's going to get revenge. Not only revenge, he's going to kill Darren, and I think Crepsley too, but talking specifically to Darren, he's going to kill him. Become a vampire hunter, murder him, right? I do like his little bit of self-awareness where he's like, I'm not strong enough yet. Like, okay, kudos to you for not just going into a blind rage and dying, because even if he somehow killed Darren, Crepsley would have murdered him very quickly. But yeah, so this is unfortunate because not Crepsley, Darren and Steve are best friends, or I guess they were, and for Steve to get to this point, it sucks. I think that I hope that, well, okay, here's the thing. To Darren, we may never see Steve again, right? He's like, in like a, few days, a couple weeks, he's going to forget all about this. He's going to have something else to occupy his mind. He's not actually going to grow up to be a vampire hunter, like this dude. I know Steve, he's this stupid. If somehow he becomes a vampire hunter, which I don't even know if it's like a real thing, if like a vampire hunter is a thing the same way vampires are, but I guess if vampires are, there's no reason why vampire hunters wouldn't be a thing. I just don't know if they're like a thing. Like, do they have like a club? If he actually does become a vampire hunter and he actually does hunt down, I mean, it's going to be hard though. Because, even Crepsley, I think, was saying earlier about how vampires never settle down, that they're constantly moving. So I guess Steve would also have to do that. So Steve, if he goes a vampire hunter, probably doesn't have like a family or anything. Because it'd be tough to keep one. Same way vampires, tough to keep. Also be tough to track, I imagine. Like I said, if they really do go all over the country or all over the world, that's going to be tiring. You know how deep your hatred has to be to like follow that trail for seemingly your whole life, insane. Um, but yeah, I hope that doesn't happen, you know, because I don't. I mean, more so than them just being best friends, or I guess you know them used to be best friends. Steve is wrong, like, and it sucks because you want to kind of see it from his eyes, and like I can see sort of how he came to that conclusion, but he's not thinking rationally. Because if he thought rationally, it'd be like, what you're saying is a conspiracy. You really think that Darren set this up from the beginning? Him going to the show, the whole like Madam Octa thing, him sneaking and seeing them. Like you said that he told Crepsley that he's evil, so he wouldn't take you on. Like what? And also the whole Octa thing. Like you didn't steal him. He let you have him. That's why he didn't kill you when he got his spider back, because he knew that you had the spider. Like there's all these weird things that he's saying, all these weird connections he's making. It's like, no, like do you know how do you know how much forethought, and also when did this happen? When did Darren meet Craig? Like, are you saying that he just met him like tonight at the show and they formed the plan then? Like, you know, Crepsley took to him so quickly that that's what happened? Or are you saying that Darren met Crepsley prior to this and they've been cooking up this scheme this whole time? Also, why? Why would Darren do that? To like deny you the one, like, like I said, explanation is like, oh, he wants to be the apprentice, so obviously he has to get rid of Steve. But like, if that's the case, I don't know why make this big show of it. Like, if Darren talked to Crepsley beforehand, he would be warned that Steve would probably approach him. So like, why wouldn't Crepsley just avoid him? Why would, like, now you're saying that Darren relishes the moment that Crepsley denies you the apprenticeship. Like, so like Darren isn't your friend anymore. Like all of a sudden he meets Crepsley and he's like, all right, Steve, hardly know him. You know, like all this doesn't really add up. Um, and it sucks, like I said, if Steve does, I'm not saying he's actually gonna become a vampire hunter, but I'm sure there's other ways that you can get revenge on people in this world. So if he does actually try to seek out revenge, it's very unfortunate because they were very, very close, and now hatred is there. It's very much one-sided, but yeah, that sucks. Um, so with all of that, there's a bunch of stuff that kind of led up to that moment that I'd like to talk about. I guess I already talked about Crepsley rejecting Steve. Really, the only thing else I want to say there is, as crazy and as like hot and cold Steve can be, I do kind of respect his like knowledge, where it's like he was really able to nail Crepsley by just reading books and just being super interested in all this horror stuff. And like he's like, yeah, I knew your book, I knew your name because I read it in a book. you know, he also knew some other stuff too. I forget exactly what it was. I think he learned about the like scars on the fingertips thing from a book too. So it's like, I do kind of respect that. Again, it does make me think that if he does, in fact, try to enact revenge, which I think is insane and stupid and just a waste of your time, again, because it's like your life is ruined because because you got rejected for something that you just found out was a possibility 5 minutes ago. Like, that's crazy. Um, I do think he could do it, though, because it seems like when he sets his mind to something, he is all in. So, I don't know. We'll see. Some other stuff that led up to that. I guess Darren becoming the half vampire. I do remember this scene with the whole like cutting the fingertips and moving the blood and like that scene. I remember the first time I read it, I was like, ugh, I don't like that. I don't like the image it puts in my mind of like blood isn't really that bad for me. Like needles and stuff, like, it's fine. I'd rather not get a shot. I'd rather not get blood drawn. That sort of stuff. But it doesn't like make me like sick to my stomach or anything. Um, but just like the blood moving like between the bodies, I'm just like, that's I don't like that. That is not ideal. Um, but there's some interesting stuff about him becoming a half vampire, which is kind of the best of both worlds. Because you get all the strengths of a vampire, so like literally physical strength and physical speed, and um, I forget what else, but some really cool stuff to the point where he's like, oh, I could become like a star athlete, but you don't get a lot of the negative. Oh, also another, well, I guess something that you could view as either a positive or a negative is that he does live longer. Not 1/10 of the speed like full vampires, but 1/5 is pretty good. You could um, optimistically live for 500 years. Um, but you don't get all the, not all, but you don't get a lot of the negatives being a vampire. So, like, sun doesn't really affect you all that much. Um, I don't remember all the other negatives, but, you know, there is some, you do take the good and the bad, especially with like the like sleep schedule too. I don't think affects you as much. You also don't get as bloodthirsty as the other ones, but clearly you do, which we'll talk about in a second. We're going to talk about, you do get bloodthirsty enough to cause some problems. Um, but yeah, it is interesting. That is, there's a couple things I'm going to talk about when it comes to Darren Shan, the author, their writing of this world and stuff, which I think is very, very fun and a very nice take on it. But one of the things I want to talk about with that is vampires, right? Like how he depicts vampires and how they're like, okay, all the base is there, but I do like how he either flips some things or completely rejects other ideas where he's like, so like in universe, they're like, oh, do I turn into a bat or a rat or something like that? And Crepsley's like, what? Are you stupid? In what world would a human be able to turn into a bat? Like, where would all the mass go? Where would all of my atoms go? Like it doesn't make any sense. Um, I think he crosses in holy water. He was able to dispel. He just took the cross and crumpled it, and then he drank the holy water. He's like, you humans are so gullible. um, I would be interested to see any other sort of stereotypes, though, any other sort of like character traits that the typical vampire has. Um, he did already dispel the whole sun thing, right? I actually don't remember if he did. I thought they did mention the sunlight thing, and he was like, "Oh, the sun won't kill me, but it does like affect me somehow or something." I don't remember that. That one's a little wishy-washy for me, but we haven't mentioned garlic yet. I don't think, unless it was a passing comment that I missed. I also didn't mention the whole, there's a whole thing with vampires have to be invited in, or else they can't. They like physically can't. It's almost like a force field is around your home. Um, yeah, we haven't really had a scenario where we like explicitly have a moment where Crepsley is like coming into a house. Um, so that might be something. Are there any other things? I guess a stake through the heart. A stake through the heart has always been a very interesting weakness for me because it's like, wouldn't a stake? I feel like a stake through the heart would kill anything, for the most part. But yeah, so I think it's fun how the author Darren depicts vampires. I mean, also other stuff too, like them being physically stronger. I think is a fairly common vampire thing, maybe. Um, but even them being like super quick, I don't think is typically a vampire thing to my knowledge. So that's cool that they kind of give that. And then the whole drinking blood thing. Yeah, I don't know. I do like how Crepsley talks about being evil, and he sort of argues with Darren back and forth, where he's like, "We're not evil," and they're like, "Oh, you drink blood," and he's like, "There's lots of animals that do that. I mean, they're literally vampire bats, right? Who drink blood. Do you consider them evil?" And he's like, "Well, they're animals." It's like, well, humans are animals too. and I don't kill them. I just take some blood and they go on their day. So I I would hope that they wrestle with that a little more, especially with Darren becoming a vampire. Well, he's half vampire. To kind of see him wrestle with those ideals of like literally and figuratively, he has to wrestle with his human side and his vampire side. So I think that'll be fun. Um, some more stuff with Darren becoming a vampire. This is kind of obviously what pushed him over the edge, but the bloodthirst got to him, and I wonder how he's gonna deal with that going forward. If like he becomes okay with drinking blood, if it's from strangers, maybe just being people he knew was tough. Because I don't think they've like explicitly stated it yet, but I would imagine a vampire dies if they don't drink blood. I imagine it can't just be like, oh, well, we can drink blood, but we can also eat food, you know? Um, yeah, so I wonder how he's going to deal with that. But a couple key moments, like I said, were him drinking Alan's blood, which is crazy. Like, I was reading that scene and I was like, he's just doing it. And there's people everywhere. This is insane. And then uh, listen, listen. Kids are stupid, and that's just how it is, right? I don't know that the way Darren played it off would work in real life. I feel like people wouldn't like laugh it off and be like, "Oh, Darren's a weirdo." They would be like, I think I need to tell an adult, and I think you need to go to like the principal or something because that's not. There's no scenario in which that is cool. There's no scenario in which I'm like, Darren over here doing Darren things. I would be like, I need to call my mom so they can bring me home. I need to process this. But the real kicker was him almost drinking Annie's blood. That one hurt. That one definitely hurt. A quick tangent off of that. He did do this thing where he was like almost hypnotizing her, putting her in a daze. So that's cool because I think that is another like vampire thing is that they can hypnotize people. So I wonder how far that goes. But anyway, back to it. Yeah, he was like putting her in a daze and was like this close to drinking her blood, and then he caught the sight of him in the mirror. I'm just honestly in that moment glad that she was in a daze and like she doesn't have to remember that because that probably would have traumatized her. Um, that was tough. But yeah, again, the whole bloodthirst thing. I'd be interested to see how he handles that in the future. And then also speaking of Annie, having to fake your own death has got to be one of the worst things. I mean, in a scenario like this where you clearly have loved ones who love you and you love them and everything, because you have to watch them go through that, and it's like you would just have to hope that they don't do anything like out of like depression or anything, because you're gone when you're really alive, and now you have to have that on your shoulders. That's got to be tough. But then the whole like Annie being there and like crying about like stop fooling and get up. It's like Annie, no. He's gone, please don't be sad. That was tough. And then I guess the last note I have, and this goes into me wanting to talk about oh shoot, I just remembered something. Oh man, okay, never mind. It is in regards to this book. I didn't just remember something random that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. um, I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, this does have to do with Darren Shan's writing of the book. There's a moment earlier when they were at the Cirque du Freak, and the Wolfman bit off this lady's hand. They were to fix it. Those like blue cloaked people had like some magic paste or something. magically glued her hand back, sewed it on, and it works or whatever. And he was like, hey, this is real. Like, this is real. We warned you. This is real. Like, stuff can happen. Like, you are here at your own risk. Blah blah blah. Right. I love that moment, especially from a writing perspective, because I think, and this is some knowledge that I'm carrying. I feel like I've read this and learned this a while ago, so I might be a little muddy on the specifics. But Darren Shan obviously likes the horror stuff. If you ever read his other stuff, which we will probably read some of his other stuff aside from this series, very big into horror, right? And I'm fairly certain that one of his goals, as like a byproduct of him writing these stories, is because he likes that stuff, and I think he liked that stuff as a kid, so he wants to kind of he hopes that books like these and series like these will get other kids into it. Again, I feel like I'm putting words in his mouth, but I'm pretty sure I like read this somewhere, like maybe on his website or something, which I think that's nice because he does a really good job of it, right? Where it's like, these are books where there are stakes and there are like scary moments and kind of like creepy moments, but these books, for the most part, there is a really, 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 really good chance that these books are not going to like traumatize your child or anything. These aren't like, you're not reading like adult, like Stephen King type stuff when you're 11. I mean, you could, and you might like it, but that has a much higher chance of being like, hey kid, you want to try horror? Here, read this. It's like, well, maybe stave off that for a while and try some Darren Shan stuff. My whole point in that is that's a moment where there's stakes, where it's like, whoa, like this is horror. Like in another book where they're really, really trying to baby the readers and be like, oh, well, I can't have certain things happen because children are going to read this. In that scenario, they would have been like, it would have been like a fake out or something. But in this book, no, like the wolfman bites off her hand and they talk about like blood shooting out of her wrist. And it's like, oh no, this is real. Even some of the other moments, like I mentioned, maybe more of like a squeamish moment and less of a scary moment was the transformation with Crepsley and Darren, with him becoming a vampire, So I do like that Darren Shan kind of rides this line between like, well, I don't want to traumatize children, but I do want to have horror elements in here, kind of get kids into horror in a way that they maybe don't have the access to because proper horror is maybe aged up a little bit. Not only for like content, but also just reading level, like certain words and the way things are phrased and stuff might just be too mature. Or the horror books they have are like very, very tame, and they're more just like Halloween costume, like Party City type stuff, and it's not actually horror. So I like that, and I respect that very much. But yeah, that is the book. Give me 1 second because what I remembered that I forgot was that I don't remember what the second book is called. So I have to look that up real quick so I can tell y'all what we are reading next week. I mean, I can just say we are covering Cirque du Freak book 2 next week, the entirety of book 2. I search it and it brings me to the dang movie that I don't want to see. It's just awful. Why would we ever want to watch that movie? I remember watching that movie. The movie was awful. It just like, I think it combined the first 2 books as well, which I'm pretty sure it did, which was weird. And like, there's just so many things where I think there was a scene. I mean, now I can talk about it because we just talked about the book, but like, I think in the movie there was a scene where Darren brings Madam Octa to school, and like she gets out and she like runs around and stuff, and I'm just like, what is this? Why is this happening? What is this ad? Okay. So it looks like book two is the vampire's assistant. Yeah. So book two, vampire's assistant. Looks like that's the second book, is what that's called. So we're gonna read that. It's gonna be a good time. Um, this is the real start of him being a vampire, so it's gonna be cool to kind of see what comes out of that, what kind of stuff they get into. Again, we're at an interesting place where like I said, there are a lot of these books, but they're so short that it might feel like two or three of these books is like actually one book. I think that is like loosely how this series is structured too. I think it's instead of 12 books, it's loosely structured as like trilogies. You know, so that might have to do with the pacing and everything. But yeah, what I was gonna say is that it is funny because we are one book deep, and I'm like, I don't really know. I don't really know where the like what the plot of this book is. Obviously it's about Darren becoming a vampire, but like, where are we going? Is it just from now on it's just a day in the life of a vampire? And those are gonna be the next 11 books. That doesn't make any sense. But like, what could they be leading to? You know, Imagine we'll see more characters, right? I don't think you could keep just the duo of Crepsley and Darren exciting and engaging for 11 more books. But we'll see. We'll see what it's all about. I'm just excited to see them be vampires, do some vampire stuff. Um, and yeah, I guess that's it. So until next time, read book two, and we'll see what vampire stuff our favorite duo will get into.